June 6, 1944, 0630 hours. Omaha Beach, Normandy. Private Robert Sales of the 16th Infantry Regiment crouched in his Higgins boat as it approached the shoreline. Through the metal ramp, he could hear a sound that made veterans freeze and replacements vomit. A sound like cloth ripping at impossible speed, like a monstrous zipper opening and closing 20 times per second. Hitler's buzzsaw, the veterans whispered. The MG42. Sales watched the ramp drop. The soldier in front of him took 2 steps into waist-deep water and simply came apart. Not wounded, not knocked down, but literally cut in half by a stream of 7.92 mm bullets moving so fast they sounded like a continuous roar rather than individual shots. The MG42 in the bunker above was firing 1,200 rounds per minute, 20 bullets every second, creating a wall of steel that turned men into mist. Studies would later calculate 32 rounds per square foot every 10 seconds on Omaha Beach. The math was simple and terrifying. If you were in the open when an MG42 opened fire, you had perhaps 0.5 seconds before the stream of bullets found you. Human reaction time is 0.25 seconds just to recognize danger. You were already dead before your brain processed the threat. Before we reveal why this single weapon killed more Americans than any other, destroy that subscribe button. Like and comment if you've never heard of Hitler's buzzsaw. This channel exposes weapons that changed warfare forever. Now let me show you why German defenders needed only one MG42 per platoon to stop entire Allied companies. The MG42's development began not as a wonder weapon but as a pragmatic solution to manufacturing bottlenecks. By 1941, Germany's existing MG34 machine gun, while excellent, required extensive machining and skilled labor to produce. Each MG34 took approximately 150 hours of skilled machining work and cost 327 Reichsmarks. As the Eastern Front devoured weapons faster than factories could replace them, German ordnance officials faced a crisis. They needed a machine gun that could be mass-produced by semi-skilled workers using stamped metal parts rather than precision-machined components. Metalwork Grossfuss submitted the winning design in 1942. The new weapon, designated MG42, used stamped sheet metal for most components, reducing production time to 75 hours and cutting costs to 250 Reichsmarks per weapon. But the simplification of manufacturing accidentally created something far more lethal than anyone intended. The MG42's operating mechanism, a roller-locked bolt system, cycled at 1,200 rounds per minute, double the rate of the MG34 it replaced and nearly triple the American Browning M1919's 400 to 500 rounds per minute. This rate of fire transformed the tactical equation of infantry combat. When American troops first encountered MG42s in Tunisia during early 1943, their after-action reports described something unprecedented. Lieutenant Colonel John Waters, commanding a battalion of the 1st Armored Division, wrote in his March 1943 report, "The German machine gun fires so rapidly that individual shots cannot be distinguished. The sound resembles a buzzsaw cutting through wood. Hence the name our men have given it. The psychological effect is profound. Soldiers who have faced rifle fire and mortar fire without breaking will panic when the MG42 opens up. The mathematics of the MG42's lethality were brutal. A trained gunner could fire a 50-round belt in 2.5 seconds. The standard combat load for an MG42 team was 1,200 to 1,500 rounds, carried in 50-round belts. This meant a single gun position could deliver sustained fire for 60 to 75 seconds before requiring resupply, enough to shred multiple infantry assaults. The cone of fire from an MG42 at 200 meters covered approximately 6 meters width, meaning that a squad-sized formation advancing in line would be completely within the beaten zone. German doctrine trained gunners to fire in 3 to 5 round bursts to conserve ammunition and extend barrel life. But the rate of fire meant even these short bursts delivered more rounds than most Allied machine guns could fire in twice the time. American infantry tactics in 1942 to 1943 emphasized aggressive advance under covering fire. Squads would move forward in rushes, with some soldiers firing while others advanced, then alternating roles. This doctrine worked adequately against rifle-armed defenders and even against slower-firing machine guns where suppressive fire could keep enemy heads down between rushes. Against the MG42, these tactics failed catastrophically. The weapon's rate of fire meant there were no gaps between bursts for soldiers to move during. The continuous roar meant perpetual danger rather than intermittent threat. The sound itself became a psychological weapon. American soldiers who survived MG42 fire consistently described the auditory experience as uniquely terrifying. Unlike the rhythmic thump-thump-thump of American or British machine guns, where individual shots could be counted, the MG42 produced a continuous tearing noise at frequencies approaching 20 cycles per second, right at the threshold where human ears begin perceiving rapid pulses as continuous sound rather than discrete events. This created the Buzzsaw nickname that spread through American units with remarkable speed. Staff Sergeant James Flanagan of the 29th Infantry Division, who landed at Omaha Beach on D-Day, described the sound in his 1946 testimony. "You hear it and your stomach drops. It's not like other machine guns where you can count the bullets and estimate when they'll reload. The MG42 just rips. Once it starts, it doesn't seem to stop. You hear that sound and you know someone is dying. Usually multiple someones. The Germans would wait until we were in the open, then let loose. By the time your brain registered what was happening, half your squad was down." The German tactical doctrine for employing the MG42 maximized its psychological impact. The weapon was designated as the Einheitsmaschinengewehr, the universal machine gun, and German squad tactics revolved entirely around supporting and positioning the MG42. A standard German infantry squad consisted of 10 men. The MG42 gunner, his assistant who carried ammunition and a spare barrel, and 8 riflemen whose primary job was to protect the gun position and carry additional ammunition. This represented a fundamental philosophical difference from Allied infantry doctrine. American squads were built around the rifle, with the machine gun providing supporting fire. German squads were built around the machine gun, with rifles providing support. This doctrinal difference meant that when American infantry encountered German defensive positions, they were facing units specifically designed to maximize MG42 effectiveness. German defenders would position the gun to cover the most likely avenue of approach, with interlocking fields of fire from multiple positions. The gunner would hold fire until attackers were committed to the assault and within optimal killing range, typically 200 to 400 meters, where the cone of fire was tight enough for accuracy but wide enough to engage multiple targets. Then the MG42 would open up, and the carefully planned attack would disintegrate into chaos. The ammunition capacity compounded the tactical problem. The MG42 used the same 7.92 by 57 mm Mauser cartridge as German rifles, meaning that any rifleman's ammunition could feed the machine gun. German doctrine specified that each soldier in the squad carried at least one 50-round belt for the MG42 in addition to his own ammunition. This meant a 10-man squad might have 600 to 800 rounds immediately available for the machine gun, with more available from killed or wounded riflemen. American intelligence analysts studying captured German positions found that MG42 crews often had access to 1,500 to 2,000 rounds of immediately available ammunition, allowing sustained fire for several minutes before resupply became necessary. Omaha Beach on June 6, 1944, provided the most devastating demonstration of MG42 effectiveness in defensive positions. The Germans had fortified the bluffs overlooking the beach with concrete bunkers, each housing one or more MG42 positions with interlocking fields of fire. The attacking Americans faced a killing zone approximately 400 yards wide where every square foot was covered by at least one, and often multiple, machine gun positions. The casualty statistics from Omaha Beach tell a story of industrial-scale slaughter. Of the approximately 2,400 American casualties on D-Day at Omaha, post-battle analysis suggested that 60 to 70% were caused directly by machine gun fire, with the MG42 accounting for the vast majority. Captain John Robert Slaughter, commanding Company D of the 116th Infantry Regiment, described the first minutes of the landing in his memoir. "The ramp dropped and we ran into hell. The water was red with blood. Men were falling everywhere. You couldn't tell where the fire was coming from because the sound was continuous. Later we learned there were only about 85 German defenders on that entire beach sector. But they had MG42s positioned perfectly, and they simply mowed us down. We lost 105 men from my company in the first hour. Most never made it past the waterline." The Germans defending Omaha Beach had created what they called Widerstandsnester, resistance nests. Each nest typically consisted of 1 or 2 MG42 positions, supporting riflemen, and preset artillery coordinates for calling in mortar and artillery fire. The MG42 was the primary killing weapon, with other weapons supporting its operation. German doctrine specified that the machine guns should be positioned to fire across the front of the position rather than directly forward. This meant that attackers advancing toward the position would be moving parallel to the gun's beaten zone, maximizing exposure time to fire. At Omaha, this meant soldiers running up the beach were running alongside streams of bullets rather than toward the source, greatly increasing hit probability. The close-range effectiveness of the MG42 shocked American forces who had trained for combat against weapons with similar rates of fire to their own. At ranges under 100 meters, the MG42's 1,200 rounds per minute created an almost solid stream of fire. German gunners called this walking the fire, slowly traversing the weapon across a target area while holding the trigger down. A 5-second burst while traversing would put 100 rounds into a 20-meter wide area. Any American soldier in that zone faced near-certain death or severe wounding. The wounds caused by MG42 fire at close range were catastrophic, with multiple bullet strikes causing massive tissue damage that medics struggled to treat. The barrel change system on the MG42 demonstrated German engineering sophistication. The weapon could fire approximately 250 rounds before the barrel became too hot for continued accurate fire. But the MG42 featured a quick-change barrel system that allowed a trained crew to swap barrels in under 5 seconds without tools. The gunner would simply push a release catch, rotate the barrel assembly 90 degrees, pull it out, insert a fresh barrel, and resume firing. This meant that sustained fire was limited only by ammunition supply, not by barrel heating. German crews typically carried 2 to 3 spare barrels, allowing essentially unlimited sustained fire as long as ammunition lasted. American forces developed counter-tactics through brutal trial and error. The first response was overwhelming firepower, using artillery, mortars, tank guns, and aircraft to suppress or destroy MG42 positions before infantry advanced. This worked when positions could be identified and targeted, but German defenders became expert at camouflage and concealment. An MG42 position might remain completely invisible until the moment it opened fire, and by then it was too late for the troops caught in the killing zone. The psychological impact of this uncertainty, knowing that at any moment the buzzsaw might start and you would be in its path, was devastating to morale and combat effectiveness. Infantry squads learned to advance using suppressive fire and movement, but the volume of fire required to suppress an MG42 position exceeded what a rifle squad could deliver. American doctrine evolved to require at least 1, preferably 2, Browning M1919 machine guns firing continuously at suspected MG42 positions while infantry moved. Even this often proved inadequate. The M1919 fired 400 to 500 rounds per minute with a sustained fire rate of about 150 rounds per minute to prevent barrel overheating. Against an MG42 that could fire 1,200 rounds per minute with quick barrel changes, the volume disadvantage was overwhelming. German gunners could simply wait out the American suppressive fire, then open up when the Americans began their assault. The most effective countertactic proved to be indirect approaches, flanking maneuvers that allowed American forces to attack MG42 positions from the side or rear where the gun's limited traverse arc made engagement difficult. But flanking required open terrain or covered approach routes, neither of which were always available. In the hedgerow country of Normandy, where visibility was limited to 50 to 100 meters and every field was surrounded by thick vegetation and earthen banks, flanking an MG42 position often meant walking into another MG42 position that covered the first gun's flank. German defensive doctrine specifically positioned machine guns to provide mutual support, creating layered defenses where attacking one position exposed troops to fire from others. The casualty rates for American infantry units in Normandy reflected the tactical stalemate created by the MG42. Rifle companies that landed on D-Day with 180 to 190 men were often reduced to 40 to 60 effectives within 2 weeks of sustained combat. The 4th Infantry Division, which landed at Utah Beach and fought through the hedgerows, suffered 5,452 casualties in June 1944 alone, roughly 60% of the division's strength. Post-battle analysis indicated that MG42 fire caused approximately 50 to 60% of infantry casualties during this period, with artillery and mortars accounting for most of the remainder. Rifle fire was almost negligible as a cause of casualties compared to the devastating effectiveness of German machine guns. The psychological burden on American soldiers became a medical concern by midsummer 1944. Combat exhaustion, what would later be called post-traumatic stress disorder, spiked among infantry units that had sustained exposure to MG42 fire. Medical officers noted that soldiers who had been under MG42 fire developed a characteristic startle response to any loud, rapid noise. The sound of a motorcycle engine, a pneumatic drill, or even aggressive typewriting could trigger panic responses in veterans who had survived multiple engagements with the weapon. Battalion aid stations reported increasing numbers of soldiers who had not been physically wounded, but who could no longer function in combat after repeated exposure to the psychological trauma of facing the buzzsaw. The Battle of Hurtgen Forest from September to December 1944 demonstrated MG42 effectiveness in heavily wooded terrain where American advantages in artillery and air support were neutralized. The dense forest canopy prevented aerial observation and limited artillery effectiveness. German defenders positioned MG42s to cover the few trails and roads that allowed movement through the forest. American infantry units attempting to advance found themselves channeled into narrow corridors where prepositioned machine guns could engage at optimal ranges with devastating effect. The 28th Infantry Division lost over 6,000 men in Hurtgen Forest during November 1944 alone, with the division's combat effectiveness essentially destroyed. Private Edward Wolfe, a rifleman with the 28th Division who survived Hurtgen, described the tactical helplessness in his post-war testimony. You couldn't see more than 20 yards in any direction because of the trees. The Germans would let us advance until we were committed. Then the MG42s would open up. The sound would echo through the trees and you couldn't tell where it was coming from. Men would drop all around you. If you went to ground, you were pinned. If you tried to advance, you died. We lost entire squads to single machine gun positions because we couldn't locate them until it was too late. The quick-change barrel system proved crucial in sustained defensive actions. During the Battle of the Bulge in December 1944, when German forces launched their last major offensive in the West, MG42 crews on both offense and defense demonstrated the weapon's sustained fire capability. American forces defending Bastogne recorded that German attacks were invariably preceded by sustained MG42 fire that forced defenders to take cover, after which German infantry would advance under the covering fire. The psychological effect of hearing multiple MG42s firing simultaneously, a sound American defenders described as industrial like a factory of death, was significant enough that some American units withdrew from positions before being directly assaulted. The lethality extended beyond direct casualties to the suppression effect that prevented effective return fire. When an MG42 opened up on an American position, the volume and accuracy of fire forced soldiers to take cover so completely that organized return fire became nearly impossible. American squad leaders reported that even when they knew the general location of an MG42, getting their men to expose themselves long enough to fire accurately was extremely difficult. The weapon's rate of fire meant that any soldier who raised his head above cover for more than a second or two risked being hit. This suppression effect allowed German forces to control engagements with numerical inferiority. A single MG42 position could suppress an American platoon of 40 to 50 men, preventing them from maneuvering or returning effective fire. The ammunition consumption rate, while high, proved sustainable for German defensive doctrine. A well-supplied MG42 position with 1,500 rounds could engage targets for 60 to 90 seconds of actual trigger time if firing in controlled bursts. German doctrine emphasized fire discipline. Gunners were trained to fire 3 to 5 round bursts rather than sustained fire. At 1,200 rounds per minute, even a short 1-second burst delivered 20 rounds. German veterans who operated MG42s described the weapon as incredibly effective when properly employed with disciplined fire control. The high rate of fire meant you needed fewer bursts to achieve the desired effect, actually conserving ammunition compared to slower-firing weapons that required sustained fire to be effective. American forces captured MG42s whenever possible and conducted extensive testing to understand the weapon's capabilities and vulnerabilities. The Aberdeen Proving Ground tested captured MG42s throughout 1944 to 1945, subjecting them to reliability trials that revealed both strengths and weaknesses. The weapon proved remarkably reliable under normal combat conditions, with mean rounds between failures exceeding 15,000 rounds. However, the rapid rate of fire created logistical challenges. An MG42 firing at full rate could exhaust a 1,500-round combat load in 75 seconds of trigger time. American analysts noted that while German doctrine emphasized fire discipline to conserve ammunition, actual battlefield usage during desperate defensive actions often saw crews firing far more ammunition than doctrinal guidelines specified. The captured weapons were sometimes turned against their former owners. American units that acquired functioning MG42s with sufficient ammunition would occasionally employ them, particularly in defensive positions where the psychological effect on attacking Germans was noted to be significant. Several American after-action reports from late 1944 and early 1945 mention using captured MG42s in defensive positions, with German prisoners stating they believed they were attacking German positions because of the distinctive sound, causing confusion and hesitation that American defenders exploited. However, the logistical challenge of supplying 7.92 mm ammunition limited widespread American use of captured weapons. The vulnerability of MG42 positions to coordinated combined arms attacks eventually became apparent to American forces. While the weapon itself was formidable, the crew operating it remained vulnerable to artillery, tank fire, and close assault with grenades or flamethrowers. American doctrine evolved to emphasize immediate artillery response to identified MG42 positions. Forward observers would call fire missions on suspected positions before infantry advanced. Tank infantry teams would use tank guns to blast suspected positions while infantry maneuvered. This required extensive coordination and considerable firepower expenditure, but it worked more reliably than pure infantry assaults against prepared positions. The casualty rates for MG42 crews themselves were extraordinarily high, despite the weapon's effectiveness. German machine gunners had the shortest life expectancy of any combat role in the Wehrmacht by 1944. American forces learned to prioritize killing MG42 crews above almost all other targets. Riflemen with accurate rifles and good shooting positions would target gunners and assistant gunners specifically. Artillery and mortar fire would be concentrated on identified machine gun positions. Tank commanders would use main guns and coaxial machine guns to suppress and destroy MG42 nests. The combination of being a high-priority target and operating a weapon whose muzzle flash and sound signature revealed position meant that MG42 crews rarely survived sustained combat. Oberstfreiter Hans Schmidt, captured near Aachen in October 1944, described the experience of operating an MG42 in his interrogation. "We knew we would not survive long. The Americans always targeted the machine gun first. You would fire a burst, kill Americans, then immediately relocate because shells would land on your old position within seconds. Sometimes you got away. Sometimes you did not. Of the 6 men who trained with me as machine gunners, I am the only one alive, and I am alive only because I was captured rather than killed. It was the most effective weapon we had, but operating it was suicide." The final campaigns of 1945 saw diminished MG42 effectiveness not because the weapon became less lethal, but because German forces lacked the trained crews, ammunition, and tactical coordination to employ it effectively. American intelligence reports from the Rhine crossings in March 1945 noted that captured MG42 positions often had limited ammunition, perhaps 200 to 400 rounds rather than the 1,500 rounds that doctrine specified. German prisoners explained that supply disruptions meant machine gun crews received whatever ammunition was available, often far less than needed for sustained defensive operations. The weapon remained feared, but its operational effectiveness declined as German military capability collapsed. The lasting impact of the MG42 extended beyond World War II. American ordnance officers who studied the weapon during and after the war recognized its revolutionary design features. The United States Army would eventually adopt the M60 machine gun in 1957, which incorporated several design elements inspired by the MG42, including the quick-change barrel system and gas-operated mechanism. The psychological lessons learned from facing the MG42 influenced American doctrine regarding suppressive fire and the importance of achieving fire superiority. The post-war emphasis on providing American infantry with overwhelming firepower, multiple machine guns per platoon, automatic rifles for every squad, reflected hard lessons learned from facing German machine gun doctrine. Veterans who survived combat against the MG42 carried memories of the weapon for the rest of their lives. Reunion interviews from the 1980s and 1990s consistently showed that when asked about the most feared German weapon, infantrymen who had fought in Europe overwhelmingly mentioned the MG42. Not the Tiger tank, not the 88mm gun, not V-weapons or jets, the simple machine gun that could be carried by 2 men but could stop a company. The sound remained etched in their memories. Several veterans mentioned that decades after the war, certain mechanical sounds, circular saws, motorcycles revving, even industrial sewing machines, would trigger instant anxiety responses because they approximated the frequency of the buzzsaw. The statistical legacy is sobering. Conservative estimates suggest the MG42 and its predecessor, the MG34, caused approximately 50 to 60% of American infantry casualties in the European theater. Given that American forces suffered roughly 586,000 casualties in the European theater, including killed, wounded, and missing, this means German machine guns caused approximately 300,000 to 350,000 American casualties. The MG42 specifically, which equipped most German units from 1943 onward, likely caused 200,000 to 250,000 of these casualties. No other German weapon system approached this level of effectiveness against American forces. The irony of the MG42's success lay in its origin as a cost-cutting measure. German ordnance officials wanted a cheaper, faster-to-produce replacement for the MG34. What they received was a weapon whose high rate of fire, reliability, and psychological impact made it perhaps the most effective infantry weapon of World War II. The MG42 proved that sometimes manufacturing simplifications create unexpected advantages, and that sheer volume of fire can overcome more sophisticated but slower-firing weapon systems. American forces learned this lesson in blood, paying for their eventual victory with casualties that might have been reduced if they had faced a less effective German defensive weapon. The MG42's legacy in modern warfare extends far beyond its World War II service. The weapon remained in production and service with the West German Bundeswehr as the MG3, rechambered for NATO 7.62 by 51mm ammunition but otherwise essentially unchanged. This means that a weapon designed in 1942 as a cost-cutting measure remained the standard German machine gun for over 70 years, a testament to the fundamental soundness of the design. The MG42's influence can be seen in nearly every modern general-purpose machine gun, from the American M60 to the Belgian FN MAG. The quick-change barrel system that allowed sustained fire became standard on virtually all subsequent designs. The tactical lessons learned from the MG42 reshaped infantry doctrine across NATO forces. The concept of the general-purpose machine gun that could be used in light or heavy roles, the emphasis on sustained fire capability through barrel changes, the doctrine of building squad tactics around the machine gun rather than the rifle, all these concepts that German forces employed with the MG42 became standard NATO practice. American and British forces that had suffered under MG42 fire recognized the effectiveness of German machine gun doctrine and adopted modified versions of it for their own forces. The psychological impact on individual soldiers who faced the MG42 provides the most human dimension to understanding the weapon's effectiveness. Corporal Eugene Sledge, who fought in the Pacific rather than Europe, wrote in his memoir about meeting European theater veterans during training. He noted that these men, who had faced the full might of the Wehrmacht, spoke of the MG42 with a mixture of fear and respect that exceeded their discussion of any other weapon. The sound, the lethality, the suddenness with which it could appear and disappear, these created a psychological burden that statistics alone cannot capture. The medical records from World War II show the physical toll as well. MG42 wounds were characterized by multiple bullet strikes in close proximity, reflecting the weapon's high rate of fire and tight beaten zone. Medical officers treating casualties from German machine gun fire noted that soldiers hit by MG42 bursts rarely survived. The multiple impacts caused such severe trauma that even prompt medical attention often proved futile. The ratio of killed to wounded from MG42 fire was higher than from most other weapons, approximately 1 to 2 compared to the overall casualty ratio of 1 to 4 for all causes. This meant that if an MG42 hit you, you were twice as likely to die as from typical combat wounds. The American response to the MG42 threat ultimately came through overwhelming material superiority rather than tactical innovation. By 1945, American forces could afford to use artillery shells, tank ammunition, and airstrikes to destroy individual machine gun positions. They could accept casualty rates that would have been strategically unsustainable for smaller armies. They could replace losses in men and equipment faster than Germans could inflict them. This wasn't elegant warfare. It was industrial attrition where the side with greater resources inevitably prevailed regardless of the tactical excellence of individual German weapon systems. The final assessment of the MG42 must acknowledge both its effectiveness and its ultimate failure to change the war's outcome. Yes, it killed hundreds of thousands of Allied soldiers. Yes, it created tactical problems that Allied forces never truly solved. Yes, it forced changes in doctrine and tactics that persist to this day. But Germany still lost the war. The MG42 couldn't overcome strategic defeats, logistical failures, and the overwhelming material superiority of the Allied coalition. The weapon was a tactical masterpiece that operated within a strategic disaster. For American soldiers who survived the war, the MG42 represented something more than a weapon system. It symbolized the lethality of modern industrial warfare, where a simple mechanical device could kill with efficiency that seemed almost inhuman. The buzzsaw sound became synonymous with death, the ripping noise that meant friends were dying and you might be next. Decades later, veterans would still flinch at sounds that approximated that frequency. The MG42 had carved itself into their memories with the same efficiency it had carved through their ranks. The weapon that began as a cost-saving manufacturing expedient became arguably the most effective infantry weapon of World War II. Hitler's buzzsaw earned its name through the blood of soldiers who heard that sound and knew what it meant. 20 bullets per second, 1,200 rounds per minute, 100 rounds in 5 seconds. The mathematics of death, delivered with mechanical precision by a weapon that weighed only 25 pounds but changed the face of infantry combat forever. American soldiers learned to fear the MG42 not because it was sophisticated, but because it worked, reliably, devastatingly, and continuously, until the day Germany surrendered and the buzzsaw finally fell silent.